times.
It's okay.
Or whatever it is, 7 times.
But no, but in terms of losing, I think your first loss must have been kind of the worst for Cry Freedom.
You know who won?
Sean Connery.
Oh, well, there you go.
For decades, Denzel Washington has been treated like Hollywood's moral compass. Calm, under pressure, disciplined to the core, a man who never chases headlines and never feeds drama. While others implode publicly, Denzel walks away quietly, leaving behind an image that feels untouchable. But that image hides something most people never see. Because behind the awards, the sermons, and the respect, there's a private list, not written down, not spoken out loud, a list of people he once trusted, admired, or defended, until they crossed a line he never forgives. Denzel doesn't explode, he doesn't argue, he erases. At 70, after a lifetime of restraint, insiders say he's no longer pretending those betrayals didn't happen. The shocking part isn't that powerful people wronged him, it's how few ever realized they were cut off for good. And the first crack in that flawless image didn't happen on a movie set. It happened in front of the entire world when Hollywood stopped acting like Hollywood and Denzel saw something he could never unsee. But that moment was only the beginning. Denzel Washington lives by a code he's never formally announced, but everyone around him eventually learns it. Respect the craft, respect the room, and never embarrass yourself or anyone else in public. He believes discipline isn't optional, it's the price of greatness. That belief shaped everything about his career. He shows up early, he knows his lines, he doesn't improvise for laughs or chase applause off camera. To Denzel, acting is work, not a circus. And that's why betrayal hits him differently. It's not about ego, it's about principle. When someone disrespects the work, mocks the discipline, or turns chaos into entertainment, Denzel doesn't debate it. He decides. Friends say once that decision is made, there's no argument, no second chance, and no dramatic fallout. Just silence. Calls stop getting answered. Invitations quietly disappear. Future opportunities fade without explanation. To outsiders, it looks like distance. Inside Hollywood, they know exactly what it means. You broke the code, and the man who believes character is revealed at your highest moment is already watching closely. And one night proved exactly why that rule exists. Most actors protect themselves with PR teams, statements, and damage control. Denzel protects himself with absence. He understands something few people in Hollywood ever learn. Responding gives power, but ignoring removes it. When he feels disrespected, he doesn't confront. He withdraws. That withdrawal sends a message louder than any headline ever could. People who once stood beside him suddenly find themselves explaining why meetings never happened and projects stalled without warning. Industry veterans say Denzel's silence isn't emotional, it's surgical. He doesn't cut people off in anger. He does it in clarity, and that's why his reactions confuse so many. There's no shouting match, no leaked texts, just a clean break that leaves the other person replaying the moment they crossed a line they didn't even know existed. For years, that pattern stayed mostly invisible, until one public meltdown forced Denzel into a room where discipline vanished completely. A moment so raw, so uncontrolled, it shattered his respect for someone he once defended without hesitation, and it all unfolded under the brightest lights Hollywood has. The Oscars are supposed to be controlled chaos, scripts, rehearsals, timing down to the second. But that night in 2022, control evaporated. The room froze, laughter died mid-breath, and something sacred about Hollywood's illusion cracked wide open. Denzel was there, watching it all unfold, not as a spectator but as someone who understood exactly what the moment represented. This wasn't about a joke or a reaction, it was about restraint, or the complete loss of it. Cameras captured the shock, but they missed what mattered most. The way Denzel stood up immediately, the way he moved without hesitation, the way his expression wasn't anger but disappointment. What he said afterward wasn't meant for the cameras, and that's precisely why it mattered, because it wasn't comfort. It was a warning about what happens when ego replaces discipline, and the world is watching. That single moment reshaped how Denzel viewed someone he once believed embodied control. And the person at the center of it never saw the distance coming. The first name on Denzel Washington's quiet list is Will Smith. For years, Denzel defended him, spoke about his work ethic, praised his focus, believed in the image Will worked hard to build. That night destroyed it in seconds. When Will lost control on the biggest stage in the world, Denzel didn't see a mistake. He saw a failure of discipline, and that distinction mattered. His now famous words, "At your highest moment, that's when the devil comes for you," weren't sympathy. They were judgment wrapped in wisdom. After that night, things changed fast. No public condemnation, no interviews, just distance. Calls stopped being returned. Private gatherings went unattended. People close to Denzel say he felt betrayed, not personally, but philosophically. Everything he believed Will stood for vanished live on camera. And in Denzel's world, once respect is gone, it never comes back. That slap didn't just end a night, it ended a relationship. And the next fracture came from someone who thought admiration was enough. After the Oscars, the public moved on quickly. Memes faded, apologies were issued, careers recalibrated. But behind the scenes, something far more permanent happened. Denzel Washington didn't make announcements or take sides publicly. He did something far more decisive. He withdrew. People noticed Will Smith was no longer mentioned in conversations where his name once came up naturally. Invitations that would have included both men suddenly didn't. Studio insiders say Denzel didn't badmouth Will, not once. Instead, he spoke in general terms about discipline, self-control, and accountability, letting everyone draw their own conclusions. That silence did the damage. In Hollywood, being ignored by someone of Denzel's stature isn't neutrality, it's exile. One producer reportedly summed it up perfectly. When Denzel stops acknowledging you, the industry notices. The slap wasn't just a loss of control. To Denzel, it was proof that the image he defended for years had been hollow. Respect, once broken publicly, couldn't be repaired privately. And while most people thought that would be the biggest fracture in Denzel's story, it wasn't. Because the next conflict didn't involve chaos at all. It involved something far more irritating to him: performance without substance. And that's when an unwanted rivalry took shape. Denzel Washington never competed with his peers the way Hollywood expects stars to. He doesn't measure himself against box office numbers or social buzz. So when the industry tried to manufacture a rivalry around him, it immediately rubbed him the wrong way. Headlines began framing a new actor as his equal, his match, the next evolution of intense, award-worthy acting. Denzel didn't respond publicly, but those close to him say he found the comparisons insulting, not to himself, but to the craft. Acting, in his mind, isn't about mystique or branding, it's about truth. And the problem wasn't competition, it was the idea that noise could replace depth. As production moved forward on a shared project, that tension quietly followed them onto the set. What some people interpreted as artistic passion, Denzel saw as distraction. While the press loved the narrative, Denzel refused to play along. He didn't engage in interviews. He didn't comment on the supposed rivalry. He simply showed up, did the work, and left. But the contrast between the two men couldn't be ignored. One was performing even when cameras weren't rolling. The other believed the work ended when the scene cut. That difference would soon harden into something far colder. And the man at the center of it never realized how quickly admiration can turn into irritation. The second name whispered on Denzel Washington's private list is Jared Leto. On paper, it should have worked. Two respected actors, two intense styles. But from the beginning, their approaches couldn't have been more different. Leto arrived surrounded by mystery, method behavior, whispered stories, strange gifts sent to cast and crew. Reporters loved it. Social media ate it up. Denzel didn't. To him, acting wasn't something you advertised between takes. It was something you delivered when the camera rolled. Crew members later said Denzel grew visibly distant as filming continued. When asked about Leto's process, his response was short and unmistakable. "Whatever works for him, I do the acting part." Everyone understood the message. Behind the scenes, Leto tried to build rapport, praising Denzel openly, calling him a master. The praise didn't land. Denzel avoided small talk, skipped casual interactions, and shut down any attempt at bonding. To him, the performance outside the frame felt dishonest, and once filming ended, the silence grew louder. After the movie wrapped, Jared Leto continued speaking highly of Denzel Washington in interviews. He called him inspiring, professional, legendary. But something was missing. Denzel never returned the praise. He didn't show up for joint press appearances. He didn't engage in shared interviews. He didn't acknowledge Leto's comments at all. In Hollywood, that absence spoke volumes. People close to the production noticed that Denzel treated the project as finished business, nothing more. Rumors circulated that he told a crew member he's chasing mystery instead of truth. Whether that line was exact or not, it captured the divide perfectly. Denzel didn't dislike Leto personally. He simply didn't respect the performance he believed existed outside the work itself. And in Denzel's world, respect is the only currency that matters. Once it's gone, admiration doesn't buy it back. That pattern, quiet disengagement instead of confrontation, was becoming unmistakable. And soon, it would repeat itself in a way no one expected. This time, not through intensity or ego, but humor, because sometimes a joke can end a relationship before it even begins. The next fracture didn't happen on set. It happened months later, on a couch under studio lights, played for laughs. When Chris Pratt joked on late-night television that working with Denzel Washington was like being around someone who doesn't know laughter exists, the audience laughed instantly. To them, it sounded harmless. To Denzel, it sounded familiar. He didn't see humor. He saw someone trading respect for applause. Insiders say the clip reached Denzel within days. He watched it quietly, replayed it once, then said only one sentence: "He wants to be funny at my expense." That was it. No anger, no rebuttal, just a decision. Plans for joint appearances quietly collapsed. A magazine cover featuring both actors was suddenly canceled. Requests to reconnect were redirected, then ignored. A crew member later explained it best: Denzel doesn't argue, he disappears you. For Chris Pratt, the relationship ended before it ever had a chance to begin. And the next betrayal hurt even more, because it came from someone he once trusted completely. What makes Denzel Washington different isn't how he reacts to disrespect. It's how quietly he removes himself afterward. People expect confrontation. They expect tension. Instead, they get absence. After the late-night joke circulated, there was no clarification call, no just kidding moment, no behind-the-scenes repair. Denzel simply stepped away. And in Hollywood, that step carries weight. Studios noticed. Publicists noticed. Suddenly, joint appearances that were almost confirmed stalled out. Press tours were restructured. Schedules conflicted that hadn't conflicted before. To the public, nothing looked wrong, but to people inside the system, the message was obvious. Denzel had closed the door. One crew member from the Magnificent Seven later said something that stuck: "He never yells, he never lectures, he just decides you're no longer part of his world." That decision isn't emotional, it's final, and it's exactly why people fear disappointing him more than angering him. If you're enjoying these untold Hollywood stories, hit like and subscribe now, because the next name cuts even deeper. Which of these moments shocked you the most so far? Let me know in the comments, because the next fracture didn't come from humor or ego. It came from someone who helped make Denzel a legend. Some betrayals sting more because they're built on trust, and that's exactly why the next story carries so much weight. When Training Day exploded in 2001, it didn't just change careers, it bonded two actors through intensity, risk, and raw performance. On screen, their chemistry was undeniable. Off-screen, there was respect. Denzel had taken a chance on a role that demanded everything. His co-star watched that transformation up close. That kind of shared experience creates an unspoken bond in Hollywood, a sense of, we went through this together. For a while, that bond held. Interviews were warm, appearances felt genuine. But then came a moment that reframed everything. Not a fight, not an argument, just a sentence that landed wrong and couldn't be taken back. Friends of Denzel say he didn't react immediately. He listened, he processed, and then he quietly pulled away. Because in his mind, minimizing the work is the same as minimizing the man, and the words that caused the damage still echo decades later. The fourth name on Denzel Washington's unspoken list is Ethan Hawke. After the award season buzz faded, Hawke gave an interview meant to sound thoughtful. Instead, it landed as dismissive. He suggested the script did most of the heavy lifting, implying that greatness came from the page, not the performance. To casual listeners, it sounded harmless. To Denzel, it was something else entirely. He saw it as a subtle erasure of the discipline, preparation, and risk that defined his work. People close to him say he described it as a knife with a smile. When they reunited for a later photo shoot, the energy was different. Hawk joked about talking too much back then. Denzel didn't laugh. He replied calmly, "You already did enough talking." That single line ended whatever remained. No argument followed. No reconciliation came later. The distance set in and stayed. And when Hollywood tried to bring them together again, Denzel had already decided. Years later, when Training Day reached a milestone anniversary, studios pushed for a reunion panel. Fans wanted nostalgia. Media wanted headlines. Hawk showed interest. Denzel declined. Officially, it was a scheduling conflict. Unofficially, insiders say Denzel refused to stand beside someone who questioned the foundation of his legacy. To him, acting isn't luck, it's labor. And suggesting otherwise crossed a line he doesn't allow anyone to step over, not even someone he once trusted. This wasn't bitterness, it was boundaries. Denzel has always believed that protecting your body of work matters more than protecting feelings. He doesn't argue history, he preserves it. That's why he avoids revisionist conversations about his success. The moment someone reframes his craft as accidental or replaceable, they're no longer welcome in the story. And the next clash would prove just how far that philosophy goes. By this point, a pattern had formed. One Hollywood slowly began to recognize. Loud personalities didn't last long around Denzel. Excessive improvisation irritated him, and casual disrespect, even disguised as humor or intellect, was unforgivable. That pattern set the stage for the most uncomfortable collaboration yet. One that began with jokes, banter, and big energy, and ended in silence so thick it reshaped an entire franchise. This wasn't about rivalry, it wasn't about ego, it was about professionalism colliding with chaos, and when the cameras finally rolled, the tension didn't explode, it froze. Because when Denzel feels pushed too far, he doesn't raise his voice, he lowers it. And the next man to learn that lesson would never forget it. Because what happened next didn't just end a friendship, it ended a future. The collaboration looked perfect on paper. Big names, big studio backing, a script designed to spark chemistry through contrast. But from the first table read, the imbalance was obvious. One side treated preparation like a discipline, the other treated it like a playground. Jokes flew, ad-libs interrupted the rhythm, stories drifted off script. Denzel Washington stayed quiet, listening, observing, measuring. He doesn't interrupt chaos, he lets it reveal itself. Crew members recall a shift in the room once Denzel finally spoke. Not loudly, not angrily, just precise. He didn't challenge the energy, he set a boundary. From that moment on, every interaction felt measured. Where others expected banter, they got silence. Where they expected playfulness, they got focus. It wasn't hostility, it was distance forming in real time. And as filming progressed, that distance turned professional and permanent. Because Denzel wasn't there to compete for laughs, he was there to deliver truth. And the man pushing that energy would soon realize how far he'd gone. The fifth name attached to Denzel Washington's quiet cutoff is Mark Wahlberg. Wahlberg arrived confident, improvisational, convinced chemistry could be created through constant banter. Denzel saw it differently. During early rehearsals, Wahlberg pitched new dialogue, riffed on scenes, and joked his way through moments Denzel treated seriously. At one point, after a long stretch of interruptions, Denzel leaned forward and said calmly, "You do your thing, I'll do mine. We'll see what the editor keeps." The room went still. Everyone understood it wasn't a joke. From that day on, the dynamic shifted. Wahlberg kept trying to lighten the mood. Denzel stayed focused. Later, when Wahlberg arrived late and blamed traffic, Denzel didn't scold him. He simply said, "Traffic didn't stop me." No insults, no raised voice, just humiliation delivered with control. That line traveled fast through the crew, and it defined their relationship from then on. But the real fallout came once the cameras stopped rolling. When the press tour began, the difference between the two men became impossible to miss. Wahlberg praised Denzel endlessly, calling him a legend and an honor to work with. Denzel responded with polite distance. Asked about their chemistry, he smiled and said, "We came, we worked, we left." That was it. Behind the scenes, discussions about a sequel quietly died. Official explanations blamed schedules and market shifts. Insiders knew better. Denzel had already made his decision. He didn't want to revisit a partnership built on clashing values. To him, professionalism isn't flexible, it's non-negotiable. And once someone proves they don't share that belief, there's no rebuilding trust. Wahlberg moved on publicly, but those close to the production say the lesson stuck. In Denzel's world, enthusiasm doesn't replace discipline, and charm doesn't excuse disruption. And yet, the final name on the list came from a place no one expected. The last fracture didn't start with rivalry or ego. It started with admiration. A younger actor who openly praised Denzel, quoted his interviews, and modeled his own career after him. For years, the respect looked one-sided but genuine. Then came an interview that shifted the tone overnight. Words meant to sound honest landed as entitlement. Suddenly, admiration turned into public grievance. Denzel heard it quickly. Not with anger, but disappointment. Friends say he felt the accusation ignored a basic truth he lives by. Mentorship isn't owed, it's earned, and demanding it publicly breaks the very discipline you claim to admire. The comment spread fast, framing Denzel as distant and unhelpful. He never responded. He didn't correct the narrative. He simply stepped away, and the person who spoke those words would feel the consequences almost immediately. The sixth and final name is Tyrese Gibson. After suggesting Denzel kept opportunities locked away from younger black actors, the damage was done. Within weeks, projects rumored to pair them quietly disappeared. Publicists blamed timing. Producers cited logistics. Everyone inside the system understood the truth. Denzel doesn't punish, he disengages. Tyrese later tried to soften his stance, praising Denzel again, calling him the greatest. But inconsistency only confirmed the decision. Years later, when asked about mentoring, Denzel offered a line that landed heavy. They don't need advice, they need discipline. Fans knew exactly who it was aimed at. That silence, unbroken, unwavering, became the final word. In Denzel Washington's world, loyalty means respect in public. Break that rule, and the door closes without a sound. And when you look at all six names together, a truth becomes impossible to ignore. When you place all six stories side by side, a clear pattern emerges. These weren't random clashes, they weren't personality feuds or headline-driven drama. Every fracture followed the same rule being broken: public disrespect, casual dismissal of discipline, turning the craft into entertainment off-camera. Denzel Washington didn't react to insults. He reacted to values being violated. It didn't matter if the person was a global superstar, a respected peer, or an admirer. Once that line was crossed, the outcome was always the same: silence, distance, removal. Hollywood slowly began to recognize it. Agents warned clients to be careful around him. Producers understood his boundaries without needing them explained. Denzel never announced his standards, but everyone learned them the hard way. And the most unsettling part wasn't how firm he was. It was how calm. Because when someone cuts you off without anger, without spectacle, and without explanation, there's nothing to fight back against. And that's exactly why his silence carries so much power. Denzel Washington doesn't correct narratives because he doesn't believe in arguing with perception. He trusts time more than statements. He knows reputations built on discipline don't need defending. When stories circulate, when rumors grow, when people misinterpret his distance as arrogance or coldness, he lets it stand. In his mind, the work already answered every question. This is why he rarely explains himself in interviews and never names names. Explaining invites debate. Debate invites noise. And noise is what he avoids at all costs. Friends say Denzel believes your behavior should speak louder than your words. And if someone misunderstands that behavior, it's not his job to convince them otherwise. That mindset has cost him friendships, collaborations, and opportunities. But it's also preserved something far more important to him: control over who has access to his world. And that choice has shaped the final chapter of his career. There's a price to living by rules that don't bend. It means fewer allies, fewer casual friendships, fewer second chances. Denzel Washington understands that price, and he pays it willingly. He's watched Hollywood reward chaos, forgive excess, and excuse behavior he finds unacceptable. Instead of adapting, he withdrew. He chose solitude over compromise, integrity over popularity. That decision is why some see him as distant, but those who know him best say he's simply selective. He believes respect should be automatic, not negotiated, and once someone proves they don't share that belief, he doesn't try to change them. He just moves on. At this stage of his life, Denzel isn't chasing relevance. He's protecting legacy. And that legacy isn't built on who stood beside him, but on who didn't. Because in the end, the silence tells the real story. Will Smith, Jared Leto, Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke, Mark Wahlberg, Tyrese Gibson, 6 very different men, 6 very different situations. One unbreakable rule: respect the craft, respect the moment, respect yourself. Every person on that list violated something Denzel considers sacred. Not loudly, not maliciously, but publicly. And in his world, public moments define private decisions. He didn't shame them. He didn't retaliate. He didn't even warn them. He simply closed the door. That's what makes these stories unsettling. Not the drama, but the finality. When Denzel Washington decides someone no longer belongs in his orbit, there is no redemption arc, just absence. And Hollywood understands absence from him is permanent, which brings us to the question no one ever asks. So what do these stories really reveal? Not a bitter man, not an unforgiving one, but a disciplined one. Denzel Washington isn't punishing people for mistakes. He's choosing peace over proximity. At 70, he no longer needs to explain who he is or what he stands for. His silence does that for him. In an industry built on noise, he mastered restraint. In a culture obsessed with forgiveness, he chose boundaries. And that's why these 6 names still linger. Not because he spoke about them, but because he never did. The truth Hollywood never told you isn't that Denzel holds grudges. It's that he remembers who you are when the world is watching. And once he sees that, he never needs to look again.